Hare Krishna, sorry I'm late.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna Prabhuji.
So, before we have a class by Sugandha, anybody like to share anything? Okay, anybody here?
Yes, Prabhuji. Are you able to see my screen?
Yes, I can see.
Okay, thank you, Prabhuji. So we're going to continue reading Canto 6, Chapter 1. We are on verse 16. Na tatha he aghavan rajan puyeta tapa adibhi yatha krishnarpita pranas tat purusha nishevaya. My dear king, so here Shukdev Goswami is saying to Parikshit Maharaj, my dear king, if a sinful person engages in the service of a bona fide devotee of the Lord and thus learns how to dedicate his life onto the lotus feet of Krishna, he can be completely purified. One cannot be purified merely by undergoing austerity, penance, brahmacharya, and other methods of atonement I have previously described. Purport. Tat Purusha refers to a preacher of Krishna consciousness, such as the spiritual master. Srila Narottam Das Thakur has said, Charya Vaishnav Seva Nistar Paiche Keba. Without serving a bona fide spiritual master, an ideal Vaishnava, who can be delivered from the clutches of Maya? This idea is also expressed in many other places. Srimad Bhagavatam 552 says, Mahat Sevam Dwaram Ahur Vimukte. If one desires liberation from the clutches of Maya, one must associate with a pure devotee, Mahatma. A Mahatma is one who engages 24 hours daily in the loving service of the Lord. As Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita 9:13, Mahatmanas tumam partha devim prakritim ashritah bhajante ananya manaso jnanatva bhutadhim avyayam. O son of Pratha, those who are not deluded, the great souls, are under the protection of the divine nature. They are fully engaged in devotional service because they know me as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, original and inexhaustible. Thus, the symptom of a Mahatma is that he has no engagement other than service to Krishna. One must render service to a Vaishnava in order to get freed from sinful reactions, revive one's original Krishna consciousness, and be trained in how to love Krishna. This is the result of Mahatma Seva. Of course, if one engages in the service of a pure devotee, the reactions of one's sinful life are vanquished automatically. Devotional service is necessary not to drive away an insignificant stock of sins, but to awaken our dormant love for Krishna. As fog is vanquished at the first glimpse of sunlight, one's sinful reactions are automatically vanquished as soon as one begins serving a pure devotee. No separate endeavor is required. The word Krishna Arpita Prana refers to a devotee who dedicates his life to serving Krishna, not to being saved from the path to hellish life. A devotee is Narayana Parayana or Vasudev Parayana, which means that the path of Vasudev or the devotional path is his life and soul. Narayana Parasarve na kutaschana bibyati. Such a devotee is not afraid of going anywhere. There is a path towards liberation in the higher planetary systems and a path towards the hellish planets, but a Narayana Para devotee is unafraid. Wherever he is sent, he simply wants to remember Krishna, wherever he may be. Such a devotee is unconcerned with hell and heaven. He is simply attached to rendering service to Krishna. When a devotee is put into hellish condition, he accepts them as Krishna's mercy. Tatte anukampam susamikshamana. He does not protest. Oh, I am such a great devotee of Krishna. Why have I been put into this misery? Instead, he thinks this is Krishna's mercy. Such an attitude is possible for a devotee who engages in the service of Krishna's representative. This is the secret of success. Okay, so we're going to discuss this verse. So in our previous classes, we have been discussing about pure devotional service. I hope everybody knows this verse by heart now. Anya bhalashita shunyam jnana karmadi navritam anukulena krishna anushilanam bhaktiruttama. that pure devotional service to Krishna is one that is free from any kind of material desires, or as we were reading in the purport, any desire to free oneself from sinful reactions also. We should not have that desire. We should be free from any desires for sense gratification or philosophical speculation, and our intention for serving Krishna should be just to please Krishna, and our service should be continuous and uninterrupted. Um, and we discussed previously the 6 characteristics of pure devotional service, and we discussed Klesha Agni, freedom from all material miseries, in our last class. So today we're going to talk about Sudurlabha, that one of the characteristics of pure devotional service is that it is Sudurlabha, it is very rarely attained. So in Srimad Bhagavatam, there is this verse in the 6th canto, Muktanam api siddhanam narayana parayana sudurlabha prashantatma kotishva api mahamune. O great sage, among many millions who are liberated and perfect in knowledge of liberation, one may be a devotee of Lord Narayana or Krishna. Such devotees are fully peaceful and they are extremely rare. So this verse is spoken by Parikshit Maharaj. This will come later in the 6th canto. So Parikshit Maharaj just heard the pastime of Vritrasura. And just for the sake of devotees who are not aware of this pastime, I'm going to just do a brief on this pastime. One time, Indra disrespected his spiritual master, Brahaspati. Indra, he was comfortably sitting on his throne, and he was being praised by other demigods. And at that time, his spiritual master, Brihaspati, entered. And Indra, because of his pride, he neglected to offer any respects to him. So right after this incident, it is mentioned that the demons became very powerful, because these demons, they were respecting their spiritual master, Shukracharya. And so they became powerful and they defeated Indra in a battle. And so these Indra and other demigods, they then went to Brahma, and Brahma chastised them for neglecting their guru. So then Brahma asked these demigods to accept Vishwarup as their guru. And Vishwarup then taught demigods and Indra the Narayana Kavach to win over these demons. And this Narayana Kavach is a set of mantras that could protect one's body in all circumstances, in all places. It's mentioned in the 6th canto, chapter 8. So now with this mantra, Narayana Kavach, the demigods, they were able to conquer these demons and they were able to win back the throne. But somehow Vishwarup was inclined towards demons. So he secretly offered oblations in the yagnas on behalf of the demons. And when Indra found out about this, he cut Vishwarup's head. So Vishwarup was killed. And then Vishwarup's father, Twashta, he became very angry at Indra. And he chanted a mantra to increase the strength of Indra's enemies. But the mantra was chanted incorrectly, and instead it caused Indra's strength to be increased. So as a result of this sacrifice that Twashta did, a fierce demon, Asura, was born, and he was called Vritrasura, and he was an enemy of Indra. And Indra was his enemy. And so there was a fierce battle between Vritrasura and Indra. And in the fight, Vritrasura, we see he's totally fearless. And he's speaking philosophy that showed his spiritual strength, his spiritual knowledge, and surrender to Krishna. And although Vritrasura was a demon, he was totally detached. He knew completely that he was not the doer. He was totally surrendered to Krishna. And he was willing to accept whatever Krishna wanted. So, like we have this prayer by Bhakti Vinod Thakur. मारो भी राखो भी जो इच्छा तोहार नित्य दास प्रति तुवा अधिकार मानसो देहो गेहो जो किछु मोर आरपीयू तुआ पादे नंद किशोर. So Bhakti Vinod Thakur prays this song that mind, body, family, whatever may be mine, I have surrendered at your lotus feet. Slay me or protect me as you wish. You are my master. I'm your eternal servant. So that was Vritrasura's mood. That, oh Lord, if you want to kill me, I'm ready. I'm your property. If you want to protect me, what do I have to fear? I'm yours. I'm your servant eternally. And he was telling Indra that even if I die, I'm going to attain the spiritual world, but you will rot in this material world because you have so many desires for material enjoyment. So like that, in this critical time, Vritrasura, he exhibited such exalted qualities of Paramahamsa, and he speaks very nice prayers. One prayer he speaks is this Srimad Bhagavatam 6:11-24. अहं हरे तव पादैकमूला दासानुदासो भवितास्मि भूया मनः स्मर्ताशु पतेर्गुणामस्ते गृणीता वा कर्म करोतु काया. So here Vritasura is praying, O my Lord, O Supreme Personality of Godhead, will I again be able to be a servant of your eternal servants who find shelter only at your lotus feet? O Lord of my life, may I again become their servant, so that my mind may always think of your transcendental attributes, my words always glorify those attributes, and my body always engage in the loving service of your Lordship. So Vritasura is praying for devotee association, because when you are in the association of devotees, hearing Krishna Katha from them, seeing their purity, their dedication, hearing Hare Krishna mantra from them, our minds are automatically attracted to Krishna, and we remember our lost relationship with Krishna. So we recently read Prithu Maharaj's pastime, and when Lord Vishnu appears, Prithu Maharaj asks Lord Vishnu for one benediction. What did he ask? He said, Sa uttam shloka mahan mukhachuto bhavat padambuja sudhakananilaha smritim punar vismrita tattva vartmanam kuyoginam no vitarate alam vare. My dear Lord, you are glorified by the selected verses uttered by great personalities. Such glorification of your lotus feet is just like saffron particles. When the transcendental vibration from the mouth of the great devotees carries the aroma of the saffron dust of your lotus feet, the forgetful living entity gradually remembers his eternal relationship with you. Devotees thus gradually come to the right conclusion about the value of life. My dear Lord, therefore, I do not need any other benediction but the opportunity to hear from the mouth of your pure devotee. So Prithu Maharaj is only praying to get association of devotees. In other places in Bhagavatam too, when Krishna or Vishnu comes to the devotee, pleased by their bhakti, and asks them to take a benediction, basically the Supreme Lord, who owns everything in the whole creation, who can give absolutely anything to the devotee, he's giving a blank check, and he's asking the devotee to write any amount on that blank check. And what are these pure devotees asking for? We have the example of Prahlad Maharaj. When Nrsingadev was pleased with him and asked for a benediction, Prahlad Maharaj asked for this benediction. Tasmadamustanubratam aham ashishigna ayushriyam vibhavam indriyam avrinchayat nichemate vilulitan uru vikramena kalatmano panyamam nijbhratya parshvam. My dear Lord, now I have complete experience concerning the worldly opulence, mystic power, longevity, and other material pleasures enjoyed by all living entities, from Lord Brahma down to the ant. As powerful time, you destroy them all. Therefore, because of my experience, I do not wish to possess them. My dear Lord, I request you to place me in touch with your pure devotee and let me serve him as a sincere servant. We have another example of Dhruva Maharaj. When Dhruva Maharaj saw Lord Vishnu, he asked for a similar benediction. Dhruva Maharaj prayed, Bhakti Muhu Pravahatam Tvai Me Prasango Bhuyad Ananta Mahatam Amalasyanam Yenaxolol Yegnaxol Banam Uru Vyasanam Bhavam Budhim Nesye Bhavad Guna Kathamrita Panamataha. So Dhruva Maharaj is praying, O unlimited Lord, kindly bless me so that I may associate with great devotees who engage in your transcendental loving service constantly, as the waves of a river constantly flow. Such transcendental devotees are completely situated in an uncontaminated state of life. By the process of devotional service, I shall surely be able to cross this nascent ocean of material existence, which is filled with waves of blazing fire like dangers. It will be very easy for me, for I am becoming mad to hear about your transcendental qualities and pastimes, which are eternally existent. And then we also have an example in Chaitanya Leela. During Mahaprakash Leela, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu asked Haridas Thakur to ask for something. And Haridas Thakur says, O Lord, may the remnants of your devotees be my foodstuff. I just want the Mahaprasad. So the remnants of the food offered to Krishna are called Mahaprasad. And this, when this Mahaprasad is taken by a devotee, the remnants are elevated to Mahaprasad. So when Haridas Thakur said this, immediately a thought came to him that he has committed an offense, asking for the remnants of devotees. So he said, sorry, I think I have no qualification for such an exalted position. Please forgive my offense. Please kindly keep me in the house of your devotee as a dog. So then he asked for this benediction. Kindly keep me in the house of your devotee as a dog. And hearing this, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu became very pleased and said, listen, my dear Haridas, anyone who resides with you for even a day or speaks with you for even a moment will certainly achieve me. One who respects you respects me, for I constantly reside within your body. You have committed no offense towards me or to any Vaishnavas. Therefore, I am awarding you pure devotional service. And we know about that pastime of the prostitute who came to Haridas Thakur. Within few days or moment association of Haridas Thakur, she became purified. And that's the benediction that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gave. So like that, I was giving few examples, and Srimad Bhagavatam is filled with many such examples when devotees are only asking for association with other devotees to be able to serve them menially and become a servant of the pure devotees of the Lord. So going back to Vritrasura's pastime, when Parikshit Maharaj he saw the exalted qualities of Vritrasura, who was a pure devotee, he was amazed. So he asked Shukdev Goswami, O great sage, among many millions who are liberated and perfect in knowledge of liberation, one may be a devotee of Lord Narayana or Krishna. Such devotees who are very peaceful are extremely rare. Vritrasura was situated in the blazing fire of battle and was an infamous sinful demon, always engaged in giving troubles and anxieties to others. How could such a demon become so greatly Krishna conscious? So Parikshit Maharaj asked these questions to Shukdev Goswami, and in response to this question, Shukdev Goswami he narrates the pastime, the history of Vritrasura, the pastime of Chitraketu Maharaj. Vritrasura in his previous life was Chitraketu Maharaj. And Chitraketu Maharaj, he was a king, and he was suffering very much, not having a child. So then Angira Muni came and he blessed him to have a child from one of his queens. But then sometime later, so the child was born, and sometime later, the other queens they became envious of this one queen who had a child, and so the other queens they killed that child, and as a result, Chitraketu and his wife they were greatly lamenting on loss of their child. And at that time, Angira Muni came with Narad Muni and gave transcendental knowledge to Chitraketu Maharaj. They told him that how every situation in this world is temporary. All the material relationships, father, mother, husband, wife, they are temporary. We have mother and father in every birth. All these designations, these upadhis, they are temporary. It's all Krishna's arrangement. And so Chitraketu Maharaj, On hearing this from Angira Muni and Narad Muni, he surrendered to them and asked them to enlighten him more about the absolute truth. So here Chitraketu Maharaj is saying, Brahmanas who are exalted to the position of Vaishnavas, the most dear servants of Krishna, sometimes dress like madmen just to benefit materialists like us, who are always attached to sense gratification, and just to dissipate our ignorance, these Vaishnavas wander on the surface of the globe according to their desire. Because you are great personalities, you can give me real knowledge. I am foolish as a village animal, like a pig or a dog, because I am merged in the darkness of ignorance. Therefore, please ignite the torch of knowledge to save me. So here we can see Chitraketu Maharaj is completely surrendering and saying he's foolish like a pig or dog. So please give me knowledge. So um, this is the same way as Arjuna surrendered to Krishna in the battle of Mahabharata. In the beginning of Bhagavad Gita, Arjuna says this verse, Karpane doshopata swabhava prachami tvam dharma samudha चेतः yakshreyasyam nishchitam bruhi tanme shishyastem sadimam tvam prapannam. So Arjuna says to Krishna, now I'm confused about my duty. I've lost all composure because of miserly weakness. In this condition, I'm asking you to tell me for certain what is best for me. Now I'm your disciple and a soul surrendered to you. Please instruct me. So that is the mood to surrender to a spiritual master. One should have a guru. So there are different types of gurus. There is Chaitya Guru, Krishna in our heart. There is Vartama Pradakshak Guru, the one who first directs us on the path of spiritual knowledge. There is Shiksha Guru, who gives us transcendental knowledge. And then there is Diksha Guru, who gives us formal initiation. Srimad Bhagavatam discusses the qualifications or who is a guru. Tasmad Gurum Prapadyeta Jignasu Shreya Uttamam Shabde Pare Cha Nishnitam Brahmane Upasham Shreyam. So these are the qualifications of a guru. One should choose a spiritual master who is bona fide, who is coming in a disciplic succession, who understands the conclusion of the Shastras, who's practicing the teachings of Shastras in his life, and who is engaged in preaching the conclusion of the Shastras. And then one should surrender to him, inquire submissively from him. One should not do any mental speculation or argue with the spiritual master. One should have full faith and fully surrender to him. One should accept whatever the spiritual master says. And but if one has relevant spiritual questions, they can ask him, but in a humble attitude. Like in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Tad vidhi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya upadakshanti te jnanam jnaninas tattvadarshina. Just try to learn the truth by approaching a spiritual master. Inquire from him submissively and render service unto him. The self-realized souls can impart knowledge unto you because they have seen the truth. And then one should render menial service to the spiritual master to please him and satisfy him. And we have heard services of two types, Vani and Vapu. Vani means following the instructions that we are receiving from a spiritual master, and Vapu means serving the physical form of the spiritual master. So, and Prabhupada mentions that one must be able to pass the test of the spiritual master. And when spiritual master, he sees the genuine desire and sincerity in us, he will bless us with the spiritual understanding. And then all the imports of the Vedas would be automatically revealed to us. Like we have this verse, Yasya deve para bhakti, yatha deve tatha guru, tasyate kathita he artha prakashante mahatmana. Only unto those great souls who have implicit faith in both the Lord and the spiritual master, all the imports of the Vedic knowledge are automatically revealed. So, in this pastime of Chitraketu Maharaj, Chitraketu surrendered to his gurus, and Narad Muni and Angira Muni, they gave him transcendental instructions, by which, first of all, his lamentation, he was crying because of his son's death. his lamentation went away. And then Narad Muni, he gave Chitraketu a mantra. So it said that the great sage Narad said, "My dear king, attentively receive from me a mantra which is most auspicious. After accepting it from me, in 7 days you will be able to see the Lord face to face." Second. And then Shukdev Goswami says, Narad Muni, having become the spiritual master of Chitraketu, instructed him fully in this prayer because Chitraketu was fully surrendered. O King Parikshit, Narad then left with the great sage Angira for the topmost planet known as Brahmalok. So then, what happened after that, after Narad Muni left? Fasting and drinking only water, Chitraketu for 1 week continuously chanted with great care and attention the mantra given by Narad Muni. O King Parikshit, after only 1 week of repeatedly practicing the mantra received from the spiritual master, Chitraketu achieved the rule of the planet of Vidyadharas as an intermediate product of his spiritual advancement in knowledge. Thereafter, within a few days, by the influence of the mantra that Chitraketu had practiced, his mind became increasingly enlightened in spiritual progress and he attained the shelter of the lotus feet of Anantadev. So Chitraketu, he was able to see the Lord face to face in 7 days, as Narad Muni had predicted, because Chitraketu, he followed the instructions of his guru, and we read he chanted the mantra with great care and attention. And Chitraketu, then when he sees Lord Sankarshan, he makes very nice prayers, and the Lord responds to Chitraketu. So this is the Supreme Lord responding to Chitraketu's prayers when he sees him. So the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Anantadev, replied as follows: O King, as a result of your having accepted the instructions spoken about me by the great sages Narad and Angira, you have become completely aware of transcendental knowledge. Because you are now educated in the spiritual science, you have seen me face to face. Therefore, you are now completely perfect. A human being can attain perfection in life by self-realization through the Vedic literature and its practical application. This is possible especially for a human being born in India, the land of piety. A man who obtains birth in such a convenient position but does not understand his self is unable to achieve the highest perfection, even if he is exalted to life in the higher planetary systems. So after the Supreme Lord talked with Chitraketu Maharaj, he left. And right after this happened, um, Chitraketu, he was flying in his airplane when he saw Mother Parvati sitting on the lap of Shiva. And during the time that Shiva was addressing an audience of elevated sages, and at that time, Chitraketu Maharaj, he said something like, how wonderful it is that Lord Shiva, who is a spiritual master of the general public, he's embracing his wife in midst of an assembly of saintly people. So Parvati, on hearing this, she got an idea that Chitraketu was offending Lord Shiva. But that was a misunderstanding on her part. So here I'll read one verse about this. One time, while Chitraketu was traveling in outer space on a brilliantly effulgent airplane given to him by Lord Vishnu, he saw Lord Shiva surrounded by Siddhas and Charanas. Lord Shiva was sitting in an assembly of great saintly persons and embracing Parvati on his lap with his arm. Chitraketu laughed loudly and spoke within the hearing of Parvati. So in the purport, Prabhupada writes, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says in this connection, the purport is that the Supreme Personality of Godhead wanted to bring Chitraketu to Vaikuntha Lok as soon as possible. The Lord's plan was that Chitraketu be cursed by Parvati to become Vritrasura, so that in his next life he could quickly return home back to Godhead. There have been many instances in which a devotee acting as a demon has been brought to the kingdom of God by the mercy of Lord. For Parvati to be embraced by Lord Shiva was natural in a relationship between husband and wife. This was nothing extraordinary for Chitraketu to see. Nonetheless, Chitraketu laughed loudly to see Lord Shiva in that situation, even though he should not have done so. Thus, he was eventually cursed. And this curse was the cause of his returning home back to Godhead. So, we see that this was all Krishna's plan, to have Chitraketu be cursed by Parvati. And as we read in the purport, Krishna wanted him to return to the spiritual world as soon as possible. And because Chitraketu, he was a surrendered disciple of Narad Muni, and he had seen the Lord face to face, as we just heard, he understood that everything that happens in life is the plan of the Lord. And that's why when he heard the curse from Parvati, he bowed down in front of Parvati and he said, Chitraketu said, "My dear mother, with my own hands folded together, I accept the curse upon me. I do not mind the curse, for happiness and distress are given by the demigods as a result of one's past deeds. Deluded by ignorance, the living entity wanders in the forest of this material world, enjoying the happiness and distress resulting from his past deeds everywhere and at all times. In this material world, neither the living entity himself nor others are the cause of material happiness and distress. But because of gross ignorance, the living entity thinks that he and others are the cause. This material world resembles the waves of a constantly flowing river. Therefore, what is curse and what is favor? What are the heavenly planets and what are the hellish planets? What is actually happiness? What is actually distress? Because the waves flow constantly, none of them have an eternal effect. O Mother, you are now unnecessarily angry, but since all my happiness and distress are destined by my past activities, I do not plead to be excused or relieved from your curse. Although what I have done, what I have said is not wrong, please let whatever you think is wrong be pardoned." So Shukdev Goswami says, "O King Parikshit, subduer of enemy, after Chitraketu satisfied Lord Shiva and his wife Parvati, he boarded his airplane, left as everybody looked on. When Lord Shiva and Parvati saw that Chitraketu, although informed of the curse, was unafraid, they smiled, being fully astonished by his behavior. Lord Shiva said to Parvati, "My dear Parvati, have you seen the greatness of the Vaishnavas? Being servants of the Supreme Personality of Godhead Hari, they are great souls and they are not interested in any kind of material happiness." And then he says, Lord Shiva says this famous verse, which was quoted by Prabhupada in our today's verse purport. Narayana para sarvena kutaschana bhibyati swarga pavarga narkeshva api tulyartha darshina. Devotees solidly engaged in the devotional service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead never fear any condition of life. For them, the heavenly planets, liberation and hellish planets are all the same. For such devotees are only interested to serve the Lord. Um, so, in the purport of this verse, I'd like to read one paragraph. Prabhupada says, Parvati might naturally have inquired how devotees become so exalted. Therefore, this verse explains that they are Narayana Para, simply dependent on Narayana. They do not mind reverses in life because in the service of Narayana, they have learned to tolerate whatever hardships there may be. They do not care whether they are in heaven or in hell. They simply engage in the service of the Lord. This is their excellence. Anukulyena Krishna Anushilanam. They are liberally engaged in the service of the Lord and therefore they are excellent. All the devotees who have taken shelter of the Lord as eternal servants are glorious. They have no eagerness to be happy of being placed in the heavenly planets, being liberated, or becoming one with the Brahman. These benefits do not appeal to them. They are simply interested in serving the Lord. So, we can understand why Chitraketu, he was fearless when he was cursed. He had received the instructions, the transcendental knowledge from his guru, Narad Muni, that he is not this body, He is a spirit soul, part and parcel of Krishna. Bhoktaram yagna tapasam sarvaloka maheshwaram suridam sarvabhutanam gyanatvam am shantim rachati. That Krishna is a supreme proprietor, Krishna is a supreme enjoyer, and he is our best friend. And our only duty is to favorably serve him. And if the Supreme Person loves us, then what is there to fear? Everything is auspicious for someone who is surrendered to Krishna and to Guru. So, this is pure devotional service. And it is Sudurlabha. In Bhagavad Gita also says, Krishna says, Manushyanam sahasreshu kaschid yatiti siddhaye yatatam api siddhanam kaschin mam veti tatvataha. Out of many thousands of among men, one may endeavor for perfection, and out of those who have achieved perfection, hardly anyone knows me in truth. So this pure devotional service is extremely rare, and there are two reasons for that. Because first, because Krishna is completely controlled by the love of his pure devotees. So that's why Krishna does not give pure devotional service that easily to everyone. Like Narad Muni, he tells Yudhishthir Maharaj how Krishna, he became a menial servant for the Pandavas. So here, it's my dear king, the supreme person, Mukunda, is actually the maintainer of all the members of Pandavas and Yadu dynasty. He is your spiritual master, worshipable deity, friend, and director of your activities. To say nothing of this, he sometimes serves your family as a messenger or servant. This means he worked just as ordinary servants do. Those engaged in getting the Lord's favor attain liberation from the Lord very easily, but he does not very easily give the opportunity to render direct service unto him. So this is the first reason why pure devotional service is so rare, because Krishna, he becomes himself the servant of his devotees. And the second reason why pure devotional service is so rare is because we cannot attain it. No matter how much we try, we can never attain pure devotional service. We can attain elevation to heavens, material opulence or liberation, but we cannot attain pure devotional service because it's a property of Krishna. When Krishna, he gives it to us by his mercy, by his sweet will, then we can experience pure devotional service. Like we have this verse, नायम आत्मा प्रवचनेन लभ्यो न मेधया न बहुना श्रुतेन यम एवेश वृणते तेन लभ्यस्तस्यैव आत्मा विवृणोते तनुम स्वाम. The Supreme Lord is not attained by expert explanation, by vast intelligence, nor even by much hearing. He is attained only by one who he himself chooses. To such a person he manifests his own form. And Krishna gives pure devotional service to us through his devotees. Through the mercy of the devotees, we attain pure devotional service. Like Prahlad Maharaj, he tells Hiranyakashipu, Matirna Krishne Paratasvato va Mitho Bhipadyate Grahavratanam Adanta Gobir Vishatam Tamishram Puna Puna Charvita Charvananam. So Prahlad Maharaj is saying that, my dear father, you cannot attain pure devotional service either by your own efforts, by help from others, or by combination of both. It's just not possible. Therefore, you continue in this material existence just chewing that which has already been chewed in the form of material enjoyment. But if you want to attain pure devotional service, then there is only one way. And then Prahlad Maharaj says this verse, Nesam matistavad urukramangrim sparshate anartha pagama yad artha mahiyasam padarajo abhishekam niskinchana vranita yavat. So here Prahlad Maharaj is saying that unless one smears the dust of the feet of a devotee who has no interest in material enjoyment on all the limbs of his body, performing an abhishek, um, putting the dust from the feet of the great souls on him, who has taken the great souls are those who have taken shelter of Krishna. Other than this process, nobody can attain Krishna consciousness. Nobody can attain pure devotional service until we smear on us the dust from the feet of the pure devotees. So Krishna consciousness only comes through causeless mercy. When Krishna is pleased with our sincerity, our desire to know him, Krishna, he sends devotees, he sends Guru in our life, and by the mercy of the Guru and devotees, we attain pure devotional service. Praman bhamite kona bhagyavan jeev, Guru Krishna prasade pai bhakti lata bij. According to their karma, all living entities, they are wandering up and down in this entire universe. And out of millions, many millions of these wandering living entities, one who is very fortunate, he gets an opportunity to associate with the bona fide spiritual master by the grace of Krishna. And by the mercy of both Krishna and the spiritual master, one receives the seed of the creeper of devotional service. So, I wanted to share some realizations. I've been reading this book, Journey Home, by Radhanath Swami Maharaj. So, maybe some of you have read that. So Maharaj, when he was 16 years old, Richard, to find what is the absolute truth, he left his home and he traveled to Europe. And from Europe, he hitchhiked through different countries. He went through Greece, Turkey, Iran, Afghanistan, Nepal, Pakistan, and then finally to India. And the Maharaj mentions that he didn't have any money. Whatever money he had with him, it was stolen. And he was alone for most part of this journey, which lasted 6 months. And he was totally dependent on the mercy of strangers to give him a ride um, on buses and trains and cars, and to give him food and a place to stay for night. So he was traveling alone through these deserts and forests and very poor countries. On the borders of the countries, he was walking through no man's zones where there was absolutely no habitation, nothing to eat. There were wild animals in the forest. So he went through these very dangerous situations, and we can imagine someone who's traveling alone through these countries with no money in his pocket. This world is a dangerous place, and Maharaj mentions many instances. They were life-threatening situations that he had to go through. One time there were some gangsters who had captured him, and he was locked up in a room. And when I was reading that, I didn't think that anybody can stay alive through that situation. But in all situations, Maharaj, he was somehow magically saved. And like one time he was grabbed by a Muslim, and this Muslim person, he was forcing him to say Allah. And one time he got very sick from dysentery, which is the infection of intestines, because he was not eating properly, um, or not eating good food. And he didn't find any proper bathrooms, and he had to manage living in poor situations, no good sanitation. He was eating just once a day, um, a dry roti that somebody would give him. And one time, um, he says, in a forest he was alone, and he was surrounded by lepers, people who had leprosy, who wouldn't let him go until he gives them some money. So he was fearing that he would get leprosy too. uh, so like that, he was in so many difficult situations, but none of these situations stopped him from searching for the absolute truth. um, he had an inner calling to go to India, to find the spiritual truth. And Maharaj, he not only tolerated these difficult situations, but in each of these situations, he cried out to God to help him, to protect him, and to give him direction, show him the way how he can approach God, and meet his guru. And as I was reading through these incidents, I was seeing how Krishna, he was protecting him in all these difficult situations. And he was magically saved in these life-threatening situations. So Maharaj said that he learned very important lessons from these difficult situations, like lessons of surrender, humility, and tolerance, and crying out to God in full surrender to help him, protect him, because there was no one else to protect him. So, traveling across the world, hitchhiking, when he finally reached at the India Pakistan border, he went through the Indian immigration desk and he showed his passport. But looking at his condition that he was in a very bad condition. And knowing that he had no money, the Indian border police, he did not allow him entry into India. So there was this lady officer, and she told him that you require at least $200 to enter. And we have enough beggars in India, and we don't want another beggar. So that's something that she told Radhanath Swami. But Radhanath Swami, he was determined to enter India, and determined to find the spiritual truth, absolute truth in India. So he sat at the border, India-Pakistan border, for many hours under a tree. And I would like to read from the book a few paragraphs. So Radhanath Swami is saying, I turned back to my tree and passed the day in turbulent thought. As the sun was setting, I observed that a shift was about to take place at the immigration desk. So earlier he was talking to a lady officer and he saw that there was a shift change and someone else was coming. The lady was leaving. An elderly man had come to relieve the woman from her duty. He was a tall Sikh in an elegantly wrapped turban, the same drab beige color as his military uniform. The female official pointed to me, making sure he understood that I was not to enter India. So that female officer, she told this person who came, that Sikh person, that do not allow this Radhanath Swami, this person, to enter into India, making sure he understood that I was not to enter India. Then an army jeep carried her away. Not knowing what else to do, I meekly approached the new officer, praying in my heart of hearts. I handed him my passport and pleaded, Please allow me entrance into your great country. His voice was cold and disinterested. So this Sikh official is saying, I was warned that you are a nuisance. I have been given strict orders to reject your entry. Now show me sufficient money or go back. So Radhanath Swami is saying, tears sprang to my eyes as I explained my life and my spiritual aspirations. I have left behind the comforts of America to search for India's spiritual treasures. Risking my life, I have hitchhiked all the way from London to reach your homeland. I yearn to find the way to God. Please be kind to me. Someday, I promise to do something good for the people of India. Honestly, sir, I will help your people. Please give me a chance. Tears filled his eyes. So the Sikh official who heard this, he started to cry. He said to Radhanath Swami, give me your passport. As the light of day was fading, he thumbed through my document, then gazed into my eyes and said, sometimes a man must follow his heart. I believe in your words. Reaching down to the table, he lifted the stamping tool by its wooden handle. Then he pressed the rubber script into an ink pad and with a thumb stamped my legal entrance into India. It is done, he said, closing the passport and handing it back to me. With an affectionate smile, he placed his hand on my head. Son, I give you my blessings. May you find the truth you are crying for. Welcome to India. So, and then Maharaj says when he came to India, he visited different yogis, Babajis, and Swamis to search for the absolute truth. And he used to just sleep outside under a tree or on the banks of Ganga, like that. And then one time he was in Bombay and he was walking, and suddenly he came across a large pandal program. And this is the event, the time when he met Prabhupada and the devotees for the first time. And I wanted to read a part of that chapter because it's very nice. So I'll read from here. Cross Maiden, so this is Bombay, is an expensive park in downtown Bombay. At the park, a gigantic pandal tent was erected. Entering, I found myself in the world of colors. Posters of Indian art hung from the red, green, and yellow striped walls of the tent. Swirls of smoke rose from pungent incense sticks. My eyes then scanned over a long table of books. Suddenly, I was captivated by the cover of one in particular. My heart leapt. The picture showed the beautiful blue boy holding a flute. Enticed, I whispered, "That's him." Yes, that's him, I thought, not knowing who he was. So he saw the picture of Krishna. I had carried my picture of him all over India. So he had a picture of Krishna with him, but he did not know who that blue boy was. Now that same person was again appearing before me. In bold red letters, the title of the book proclaimed itself, Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. I softly cried out, Krishna! His name is Krishna! The long awaited mystery was now revealed. Eager to learn more about him, I asked if I could look through the book. A Western monk with shaved head and white robes stood behind the table. Taken aback, he asked, "You speak English?" Sir Radhanath Swami Maharaj replied, "Yes, I am from India." I eagerly reached out for the book. So this devotee, he said, "Really? You're not Indian? Are you a worshipper of Shiva?" He placed the book in my hands. I don't really know what I am, but I have lived with the Shivites. My name is Tushta, so this devotee is saying. And he said, here's a chapter I think you'll find interesting. It is about relationship between Shiva and Krishna. So then Radhanath Swami is saying, I wondered why he was so surprised to learn that I was from America. I hadn't seen myself in a mirror for a long time and had not realized until now that with my brown eyes and relatively dark complexion, long matted hair, and river stained robes, perhaps I had come to look just like an Indian mendicant. So, this is how Radhanath Swami was looking at that time, looking like an Indian mendicant. Embracing the book to my heart, I wandered to a quiet place, and as a man parched from thirst drinks from an oasis of cool water, I read the Krishna book. He was so eager to get spiritual knowledge. It's like a person who has not drunk water and he is so thirsty and he got this book, the Krishna book, and he's drinking it like a person parched from thirst drinks from an oasis of cool water. It began in the Western countries when someone sees the cover of a book like Krishna, he immediately asks, "Who is Krishna?" It went on to explain that Krishna is the Supreme Lord and that the name Krishna meant all attractive. Because God possesses all wealth, power, fame, beauty, wisdom, and renunciation to an unlimited degree, he is all attractive. As I read, a young American woman draped in a yellow sari sat on the stage singing beautiful devotional songs. Her name, I would later learn, was Yamuna Devi. Absorbed in both reading the Krishna book and listening to her soul stirring song, I was overcome with emotion. As evening approached, the pandal filled to over 25,000 people. Eager to hear the speaker, I returned the book and sat in the rear corner of the massive crowd. On the stage, about 20 Western devotees chanted and danced. The shaven headed men wearing the traditional robes of a sadhu, and the women wearing colorful saris. The whole crowd was anticipating the coming of the Guru. To everyone's deep satisfaction, he soon appeared on the stage. So Prabhupada appeared on the stage. He was a regal man with shaven head and saffron robes, and his body glowed. He walked with the grace of a swan and gestured with the confidence of a king. Still his demeanor was meek and humble, as if he were seeing God everywhere he looked. So this is how Radhanath Swami is describing first time he saw Prabhupada, how he looked as if he was seeing God everywhere he looked. After welcoming the audience with joined palms, he sat on an elevated seat. At the far back of the crowd, I could barely see. I yearned to be closer, but felt ashamed to step in front of anyone else. So he was far back, and there were thousands of people assembled, and Radha Swami, he was far away from the stage. Up on the stage, I could see one devotee moving from side to side taking photos. The Guru called him over and spoke in his ear. The devotee then gazed into the massive crowd, looking from side to side until he spotted the person he was looking for. Again and again he signaled someone in the multitude to come up on the stage, but when nobody came, he finally descended into the crowd. Painstakingly, he tried to pass through the tens of thousands of people seated on the ground. To my surprise, he walked all the way to the rear and right up to me. Then, with a calm smile, he announced, Srila Prabhupada wants you to sit with him on the stage. Stunned, I mumbled, how does he know me? So, how did Srila Prabhupada, sitting on the stage amongst thousands of people, Nanda Swami was far back in the crowd, and Srila Prabhupada saw him and he told the devotees, bring him on the stage. So Ramnath Swami is continuing. He gave no reply, but simply took me by the hand and pulled me through the masses and onto the stage. There he presented me before the Guru, whose oceanic smile flooded me with joy. Srila Prabhupada looked so familiar, but I didn't know why. Sitting cross-legged with the back erect, he was dressed in the neatly arranged saffron robes of a Swami. With a wave of his hand, he graciously motioned for me to sit near to him. So I took my seat on the carpeted stage. In awe, I looked up at him. His large, gentle eyes briefly studied mine with a glance that touched my soul. His complexion was bronze, his nose wide and rounded, and his drooping ears were like the ears of Lord Buddha. From his recently shaved head, short white hairs had grown out on either side, and two vertical lines of yellow clay representing the yogic path of devotion adorned his forehead. Two deep creases sloped down from the sides of his nose to the corners of his full sculpted lips. As the devotees jubilantly danced and sang, their robes clean and bright, I became aware of my own robes, tattered and stained by the mud of the rivers. Whereas the devotee men had freshly shaven heads and faces, I could not even remember the last time I shaved my face, not to speak of cutting or combing my hair. Having bathed in a river or muddy pond each day, I must have appeared filthy in their presence. While they sang and danced jubilantly, I sat in silence, habituated to residing in secluded forests. Now here I was sitting on the stage with tens of thousands of people. So earlier, Raghunath Swami used to stay in seclusion in forest and meditate on the God. But here he's saying he's sitting in front of thousands of people, and that too on the stage in this condition. Feeling self-conscious and extremely out of place, I was about to flee. So thinking like this, he was thinking in his heart to run away um, from this crowd of people looking at him. But then Srila Prabhupada cast such an assuring, affectionate smile upon me that I instantly felt right at home. Why had this man called me up to sit with him, me of all people? As I pondered this mystery, Srila Prabhupada picked up a pair of finger cymbals and began to tap them together, each of his fingers moving with meticulous grace as a steady rhythm rang out. In a deep resonant voice, his body swaying gently, he began to chant, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. I gasped. It was like a dream to hear him chanting the very same mantra I had heard from the song of Mother Ganges. How often had I chanted this mantra since that day in Rishikesh when the river had revealed it to me? A tingle shot up my spine, shivers rushed through my limbs, and my heart pounded like a kettle drum. Through tear-filled eyes, I gazed up at Srila Prabhupada, whose eyes were tightly shut, eyebrows tensed. His lips arched downward as the mantra poured out from them. The massive crowd sang in response. The devotees on stage played traditional drums, cymbals, and gongs as the tent resonated with the sound of the mantra. After the chanting, Srila Prabhupada cleared his throat and spoke into the microphone in a deep, resonant voice, explaining the meaning of the mantra. We are singing the Maha Mantra or the great chanting for deliverance. He then described that the name Hare was an invocation for Radha, the divine energy or female counterpart of the Lord. It is she that is the origin and giver of the love of God. Krishna is the name of God that means he is all attractive. And the name Ram means the Lord is the supreme enjoyer and bestows unending bliss to those who offer him their love. He went on to explain that transcendental sound vibration cleansed the heart of selfish desires and awakened our original natural love for God, bringing about spiritual happiness. While chanting the Mahamantra, Srila Prabhupada continued, "We are praying to the Lord, please engage me in your loving service eternally." My mind flew back to the Himalayas and to that rock in Mother Ganges. I finally understood. These were the names of that beautiful blue boy playing the flute, the one who had appeared to me in the painting, and he was a form of God. All along I have been chanting the mantra and meditating on the painting, having no clue of the connection. Now Srila Prabhupada reveals very simply the sacred mysteries that I have pondered for so long. My mind soared in amazement as I observed the adventures of my quest unfolding. Smiling, I redirected my attention to the words of Srila Prabhupada. He confidently explained how true religion was not the property of any sect, caste, or creed, but the nature of all living beings. Our nature, he said, is to love God, but this love has been forgotten since time immemorial. Such love of God must be unconditional to completely satisfy the self. We are spirit souls, he said, but in ignorance we identify this temporary body with the self. He went on to explain how the cause of all suffering was forgetfulness of our relationship with God, and how this consciousness could be easily awakened by the chanting of God's names. In a voice brimming with compassion, he pleaded with the audience to take this message seriously. This process, he said, which revives our dormant love of God is called Bhakti Yoga. As Srila Prabhupada was speaking, I heard a voice within my heart proclaim, "This is your Guru." But my mind could not accept it. A battle ensued between my brain and my heart. There are many saints and gurus I have met in the past, and I will meet more in the future. I can't be hasty. This is the most important decision of my life. I must be sure before committing myself to any particular path. My mind won the battle, and still confused, I dismissed the idea that I was ready to choose a guru. After his lecture, as he was leaving, Srila Prabhupada stopped directly in front of me. Bustling crowds were gathered around us, and my mind was exploding with excitement. I spontaneously fell to my knees and extended my hand to touch his feet. So Radhanath Swami, he fell on the ground and touched Prabhupada's feet. Then a thunderous voice shouted, "No one touches Prabhupada's feet." So a disciple of Prabhupada shouted that no one should touch Prabhupada's feet. Struck with shame, I retracted my hand. But Srila Prabhupada looked deeply into my eyes. I sensed that he could feel the pain of my shame and felt responsible for the cutting words of his disciple. I felt a wave of affection pouring out from him. Then, with a beaming smile, he gently said, "You may touch my feet." Feeling both relieved and honored, I placed the dust of his feet on my head. He rubbed my head affectionately and invited me to sit on the stage with him each morning and evening. His kindness left me speechless. So I'll fast forward. And after this, Radhanath Swami, he met other devotees, and the devotees very kindly talked with him and gave him plate of prasadam. Let's see. So I'll start from here, and very small amount of it is left. One evening, as he lectured, the seriousness of his demeanor endured me to question my own sincerity. So again, Radhanath Swami is listening to a lecture by Prabhupada was giving in that Pandal program. So when he was listening, he was questioning his own sincerity. How genuine is my motivation? Am I taking responsibility for my own life and that of others? Why have I not yet found a particular path? Is it fear of commitment or frivolity? What uncertain future is this life leading me into? At the moment these thoughts were running through my head, from his high seat in the presence of thousands of onlookers, Srila Prabhupada fixed his eyes into mine. So Srila Prabhupada is looking at him. Locked in his gaze, I felt the massive crowd blur into oblivion. It seemed that nobody existed except him and me. I could feel his eyes penetrating into the depths of my soul and silently speaking through my heart. Do not waste precious time. Krishna is waiting for you. I trembled in gratitude, but knew that I would soon leave. In my confusion, I felt it the honest thing to do. So still, Radhanath Swami, um, he was not ready to accept this path. The experience of those days with him had been incredible, but my faith was still like an anchorless boat on a stormy sea. My fear of commitment and a stirring in my heart to see more places and meet more enlightened beings impelled me to move on. Yes, I thought a deep conviction in both my intellect and heart must come before I can honestly accept a particular path or guru. So he was still looking for that conviction to select the guru. I believed that God would eventually reveal my destiny. So, just finishing up this. Overwhelmed by Srila Prabhupada's wisdom and compassion, I wanted to buy his Krishna book before leaving Bombay. I had no money so to afford it. I took to the streets of Bombay to beg. So, Radhanath Swami, he at that time he had no money to buy the Krishna book which he so eagerly wanted to read, and for that, he decided to beg on the streets of Bombay. But I was too shy to be a good beggar. Pained and intimidated, I tried but couldn't raise enough. On the last day of the festival, a disciple brought me before Srila Prabhupada. He stood in the sunshine outside the tent. His head was slightly tilted upward, his back straight, and both his hands gripped the handle of his wooden cane, which he touched the ground between his feet. His large eyes gazed into mine, and his downward slanting lips highlighted his grave demeanor. Yes? He asked. So the disciple said, this boy wants your new book so badly, he has been begging in the streets with the hope to buy it. Srila Prabhupada was so touched that with his own hands he gave me a copy of the book. His eyes flooded with kindness, and he patted my head and softly said, thank you very much. Thank you very much, my heart echoed. I bowed my head in reverence. So, just a second. So, in a lecture that I was reading by Radhanath Swami Maharaj, he mentions that it was the compassion that Prabhupada showed him in the first meeting that really had the impact on him. And after this, we have read the rest of the story when we were reading about Gopi Jan Vallabh pastime, that once Radhanath Swami he was traveling through a crowded train to Amarnath for a pilgrimage. When the train it stopped and he was somehow pushed out, and he found out that that place was Mathura and that the day was Janmashtami, and so he stayed in Mathura and he went to Vrindavan. He wanted to stay there for only 3 days, but then because he got typhoid fever, he couldn't leave that place, and he had to spend 2 months in a Gaudiya Math in Vrindavan. And during that 2 months, he read Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, and other scriptures, and that's when he was convinced. So, and then Maharaj said in the lecture that I came to the conclusion that all the theologies, philosophies, religions, and spiritual path that I have experienced, there is nothing higher, nothing sweeter, nothing beautiful than the religion of Vrindavan, that devotion to Sri Krishna and Srimati Radharani. So he said he decided to spend the rest of his life in Vrindavan and never leave. So as I was reading this book and hearing the lecture, my realization was that we hear that Maharaj, he had to really struggle, and he had a burning desire to understand the absolute truth, to find a real guru. And that's why he went through so much difficulty, hitchhiking from London to India. Now compare that to our situation. We didn't have to go anywhere. devotees came into our life. Bhagavad Gita was given to us by the devotees. And I can say for myself, I personally didn't have to struggle that much. Srila Prabhupada's books and devotees came into my life. But the thing is that the things that come very easily, we don't appreciate it that much. Do we really understand what wealth we have been given in the form of this Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, the Hare Krishna mantra? We heard Raghunath Swami, he was begging on the street to get the Krishna book. We have been given Krishna book very easily, and it is there available to us, but do we have time to read it? So if we really understand the value of what we have been given to us and freely given to us, then we would be really serious in reading Prabhupada's books non-stop and chanting non-stop and applying Srila Prabhupada's instructions in our life. And born in the land of India, we have known Krishna since childhood. Raghunath Swami, he was so desperate to enter India to learn the spiritual knowledge. He was not willing to return back from the border when they rejected his entry. So we have this verse, Bharat Bhumi te janma hoilo jar, janma sartha karo paropkar. That it is a duty of everyone who was born in the land of India to make his life successful by taking advantage of these Vedic literatures. So we are so fortunate that we are born in India and we have been given this knowledge and we know about Krishna since birth. So like Raghunath Swami Maharaj, we should have a burning desire to understand Krishna, to receive instructions from Guru. And when we receive instructions from Guru, we should hear with rapt attention. Prabhupada writes in one purport, we should hear Srimad Bhagavatam, hear the instructions of the Guru with rapt attention from the right person, and then he can at once realize the presence of Lord Krishna in every page. The secret of knowing Bhagavatam is mentioned here. No one can give rapt attention who is not pure in mind. No one can be pure in mind who is not pure in action. No one can be pure in action who is not pure in eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. But somehow or other, if someone hears with rapt attention from the right source at the very beginning, one can assuredly see Lord Krishna in the person, Lord Krishna in person in the pages of Bhagavatam. So we should hear attentively all the classes from our Shiksha Guru, our Diksha Guru. We should take notes. We should contemplate on what we have heard and how we can implement those instructions in our life. And this is the process of going from Gyan to Vigyan, from knowledge to realization. So I will stop here. Sorry for going over. Thank you, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, thank you for the nice class. Somebody like to say anything?
Hare Krishna Mataji, thank you so much for the wonderful class you gave. Just one thing, Mataji, I was just Radhanath Maharaj, he also had so many difficulties in his life to get Krishna consciousness. We see Prabhupada's life also, there were so many difficulties. So even they are so great, so great souls, so they're getting so many difficulties, and we are not getting that many difficulties that they have got. So should we think that Krishna is still far from us?
So Krishna has sent these great souls to show an example of how a great devotee goes through difficulties. So definitely we don't have to go through difficulties in our life to experience surrender or love from Krishna. The best kind of learning is when we can hear the instructions from our gurus and learn from their experience rather than experiencing it ourselves. So that's the highest kind of learning, is hearing from instructions. And the second kind of learning is to see others, how they have gone through difficulties and learn from their experience. The third class of learning is that when we experience it ourselves. So that's not the highest. So Krishna is giving us examples in the form of these great devotees, how they are so desperate in searching for Krishna and going through difficulties to attain knowledge of Krishna and the absolute truth. So we should learn from them That's the highest kind of learning. Hear their instructions.
Okay, thank you, Mataji, so much. And also, when you were telling that Radhanath Swami, he was wanting the Krishna book so badly. So, like in my life, Prem Sindhu Prabhu, when I went to his house, he gifted me that book, and at that time, I was reading that book. Like I read it for so many days, and then I heard that Krishna book is all those, like everything that is in Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita is in Krishna book. So I stopped reading Krishna book and I started reading Bhagavatam. So if we read Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita, should we even read Krishna book, or because everything is in that book also?
We should try to read all books of Srila Prabhupada, but first we should start with Bhagavad Gita and then Srimad Bhagavatam. And Canto 10 of Srimad Bhagavatam is Krishna book. The reason why Prabhupada launched Krishna book first before any other books is because he did not know how long he would live. So, and he wanted to give the best thing to the world, which is Krishna's pastime, along with his philosophical understanding of those pastimes. So that's why he had a Krishna book first published before any other book. That was the reason. But for us, we should start with Bhagavad Gita and Srimad Bhagavatam, starting Canto 1, reaching up to Canto 10, which is what Krishna book is.
Hare Krishna. Thank you so much, Mataji.
Mataji, what a great story. Where is Radhanath Swami right now? Is he in India? Can we see him?
Yeah, I think well, he travels a lot, but due to COVID, I think he's not traveling that much. I'm not sure where he's situated right now. So he basically is ISKCON Chopati, Bombay Temple in India. He is leading that temple there, and but he travels a lot of places, all over the world. And I definitely encourage you to read this book, which is amazing. It has changed my attitude towards bhakti, the Journey Home. So he wrote Journey Home and The Journey Within, 2 books. And you should see his lectures and stuff. That's how you can associate with him for now. But he comes to many temples, all the time. After the COVID situation, yeah, you can also see him.
Yeah, thank you, Mataji. Prem Sindhu Prabhu, I will get in touch with you. I would love to read that book.
Yeah, I think I have to send you some books. I can send you that. I think we may have a copy. I have to check.
It's also
Probably.
available online in the ebook. It's very cheap, $10 as the ebook. So I can paste the link.
Sure.
Yeah,
Thank you, Mataji.
Kindle book. So the question about we have already been given this opportunity because we may have done some struggle in our past life, and one takes birth in India. As the Shastras say, it is a very, very, very fortunate birth. So those who have taken, of course, that should not make us proud or anything, but even the demigods are waiting to take land. I mean, to take birth in the land of Bharatvarsha. So to get birth in the land of Bharatvarsha is a very great opportunity. And so we may have done some struggle in our past life, something that, because our birth is also according to our, past karma and our desires. So that is also another way to look at it. But that should not make us proud that, okay, because now so many people are born in Bharatvarsha, but they are not pursuing spiritual life also. So that is another thing to consider also. So,
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Thank you so much for wonderful class. Maharaj is at present in Chicago, Mataji. And coming to that, Mataji asked one question. Can I add a comment, Mataji?
yeah, sure.
The struggles like how Prabhupada and Maharaj gone through, and it means that we are not getting that kind of struggles. Means it means that we have to go, or we are not at closer to Krishna. So regarding that question, like Premchandra Prabhu always quotes in his class, we get the question paper according to our capacity or according to our level. Like everybody's question paper is different. So some souls are there, like who comes like to preach, to show, like as Mataji explained, they show how they gone through. They set an example how we need to go through the difficulties. So, but we may not be in that level. So, but it doesn't mean that we are far from Krishna. But only thing is, our question paper is different and our capacity level is different. But whatever we gone through, even slight difficulties also, the sincerity and determination we surrender to the devotion, it makes us purity. So the purity level comes at the time of difficulties, how much we take shelter of the Krishna. So that total process of purification is in the hands of Krishna. So we may not feel like, we are far from Krishna, but thing is, he has his plan. So that's what I want to add, Prabhuji. And very nice class, Mataji. I like the point, like a pure devotional service is not something we attain ourselves. And you gave two reasons. It is the property of Krishna, and by his mercy only we will get. And the other point I forgot, but I'll go through the class again. But very, very nice points. And I have one
Yeah,
question from your previous class, Mataji. It's you explained about the chanting that time, like you told one story, like one lady used to give milk to one sadhu, and she used to cross the river. And one day, I think she came late, and sadhu scolded, and he came to know how she is traveling. And when he tries like that, she thought of like, his dhoti is getting wet like that, and so that's, yeah. Can you please tell me the source of that story? Like where did you heard some reference from the story?
Yeah, it was Bhakti Rasamrit Swami Maharaj. I can send you the link to the lecture. He told that story, and I also found it online on Bhagavatam Katha website. So I don't know the reference, which scripture, which Purana has that, but the point was that it's all about faith. We might know all the scriptures from top to bottom, all the verses, but unless we have faith in them and we implement them in our life, there would not be an impact. So that faith does not need like any kind of material qualification. That lady was uneducated, and that Brahmana, he was very educated and appreciated in the society. But so material qualifications are not needed for faith. All that is needed is full faith and surrender in the instructions of the scriptures, instructions of the Guru, and implementing that in our life.
Thank you so much, Mataji. I look for, please share that link of the Maharaj class.
Sure, Mataji. And the second reason why Krishna does not give pure devotional service is because he himself becomes a servant of the
Yes.
devotees. And I gave example of the Pandavas.
Yes, I recollected. But thank you so much, Mataji. A lot of points from your classes definitely need to hear like a couple of times. So if you make all the videos, any download or something, please do share as a playlist. So it's going to help us in our daily sadhana.
Thank you, Mataji.
Yeah, Hare Krishna, Mataji.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, everyone, for joining.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
We are going to stop here. We'll see you in the evening at 6 o'clock. We'll read some Bhagavatam verses from Prithu Maharaj. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Hare